Hello and welcome to No Wrong Choices, the podcast that explores the career journeys of interesting and accomplished people to uncover insights that we can use within our own journeys. I'm Larry Samuels, soon to be joined by Tushar Saxena and Larry Shea. If you enjoy the stories that we're bringing forward, please support us by liking and following our show on your favorite podcasting platform, following us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or Threads, and by becoming a subscriber to the show by signing up at NoWrongChoices.com. This episode features the voice actor, comedian, and puppeteer Bill Lobley. Bill's known for his work in hits such as Arcane on Netflix, blockbuster video games, movies, commercials, and just about anything else you can think of. Tushar, why don't you set this one up for us?
Well, first of all, I mean, he's a Fordham guy. Obviously, he's going to be an awesome interview.
Of course.
So we can't go wrong there. You know what? And after researching him a bit, I mean, look, I went to Fordham, but I never really thought of Fordham as a theater school in some senses, right? So, but Denzel Washington went to Fordham, so yes, we have that. We have chops. People who went to Fordham went on to do big things in movies and television. But you know, Bill is probably like the perfect personification of, I won't say a grinder, but a guy who pretty much made his mind up at a young age that this is what he wants to do. And he's been pretty successful at it. You know, he's obviously gone through the ups and downs of anyone's career, as they're supposed to. But for the most part, he's done a lot. He's done a great deal. And look, I got to say, this is the first puppeteer we've had on this show. Hopefully not the last. But you know, who knew you can make a living as a puppeteer if your name wasn't Jim Henson, of all things. But look, he's going to be a fascinating interview. We've had the opportunity to just kind of talk with him a little bit in passing before doing this, and you know, the guy's got the gift of gab. That we know that for sure. And like I said, he's a Fordham guy. Obviously, he's going to be a great interview.
Yeah, this is a field that I've touched on basically, and let me just say touched on, because compared to Bill Lobley is acting, voiceover, etc. on steroids. Basically, this guy has done it all. And this is not an easy field to break into, and to be consistently getting work. So I'm fascinated to see how he gets his work, how it transpired. Was he the class clown? Was this training? You know, I think you have to be built for this to be as successful as Bill Lobley is. So I think we're about to get an education on somebody who's literally built for this kind of work, and I'm fascinated to see how he got there.
Absolutely. And I should call out that he and I connected maybe a month ago, 6 weeks ago. We spoke on the phone for an hour, and then an hour and 5 minutes, and then an hour and 10 minutes. This guy is a storyteller. He's a character, and he is literally, as Larry Shea said, built for this universe. This is going to be a great conversation. Here is Bill Lobley. Now joining No Wrong Choices is the voice actor, comedian, puppeteer, certified gourmet chef, and mixologist, Bill Lobley. Bill, thank you so much for joining us.
I don't know if I should answer. I'm drunk. I've been really working hard on the mixology. No, I am thrilled to be here. And yeah, by the way, all of those are true. And to hear them all in the litany like that is a little bit frightening.
You are the first puppeteer we've had on this program. I can tell you this. Hopefully not the last. All right. So I know that you're a Fordham guy. I mean,
yes.
Looking over your bio, I too am wearing the hat today. So as a fellow Fordham alum, first of all, welcome again. I know we already said hello. I'm going to say it again as a Fordham alum.
Hail, man of Fordham, hail.
You're darn right. Bill, what are you doing these days? Like, what is I know you've done a ton of cartoon work, some video game work as well. What are you doing these days?
These days, it is animation work, video game work. Of course, my own. We'll get into extracurricular stuff later, as much as I'm allowed to speak to it by the police. But the thing about the specific work I'm doing is, and when you get on a podcast or an interview with someone, quote, in the field, they know there's a thing called NDAs, which the whole world knows about this week. But you can't talk about some things, and it is very strange sometimes. But I do know that I am working on a series right now for Adult Swim. And there's no NDA with that because we've been through it, and they're in production, and that's really great. So that is an adult cartoon, and that's very, very funny. called OMG Yes. Oh my God, yes. And I did something that's for Netflix that's more of a kind of like a steampunk Western that I can't talk about.
Okay.
We're doing a second season of Arcane, which is a big show that just won an Emmy last year or 2 years ago when it was had the first season. They're making the public wait. And then just regular voiceover stuff. I'm the voice of a talking heart valve for Edwards Life Sciences, which should be on all over the internet at some point. So it's pretty crazy. Someone asked me recently, we're at having a guys' weekend, bunch of Fordham guys, and everyone was saying, okay, guys, it's like we're asking all the girl questions, everybody has to say what their favorite part of their job is. And we're like, oh, this is a stupid game. But then, you learn a lot from your college friends, many of them of whom were in film. And it got to me and I really didn't know what to say. I really love what I do. Thank God. And I said, I think one of the most interesting parts for me is when I wake up in the morning, I don't know who I'm going to be that day,
Wow.
So
That is pretty cool.
and it's if I look at it that way, then you can't wait to get out of bed. I mean, yesterday I was a mob chef for something I read for, like a guy who's a chef, but he's got mob ties. So it's like,
What does that sound like? Can you give us a quick soundbite?
You always give him choices, and was just kind of a guy that talks like this. And don't you know what an amuse bouche is? What's wrong with you? And then he stuffs him full of, creme fraiche or something. I don't know. So, and then I gave him one that was more erudite, like a more sophisticated chef would be. I'm going to kill you, and then he's got Moose and Rocco in the, in the walk-in freezer, which is convenient if you're going to put a body in there. So, so you just never know. So in that respect, it's pretty exciting. So yeah, that's what I'm working on now. And by the way, that could change tomorrow. Could be like, here's a new thing that I had read for weeks or months ago, or even days ago, and it's like, oh, I'm doing that. I also do ADR, which is like looping and additional dialogue replacement for movies, and you could be anywhere for that. We're doing that. Some of that is still remote from the pandemic, but thank God we're back in the studios now in the city with 8 or 10 other actors doing all the crazy background stuff you hear that you don't think is really important, but we sure think it is.
So let's bring it back to the beginning. I mean, I just have this vision in my mind that when you were a child, you were class clown. You had to be, right? Like how did this start?
Well, I don't know. The story that I like to say is when I came out of the womb and the doctor slapped me in the behind, I did a soliloquy, So, but for those playing along at home, that's like from birth. There's never a time when I didn't know I wanted to do that. And as I got into school, or even like with friends, it just became aware that that's what I like to do. So that's kind of how it started. And then, in any elementary school, other than goofing around with your friends, there's always a play. Now, it probably will surprise you that I wasn't the guy that's dipping the girls' pigtails into the inkwell and turning my eyelids inside out in science class and scaring the substitute. Nothing like that. In fact, I was quite well behaved.
I find that hard to believe.
Believe me, my upbringing was fairly strict, and the idea that I would goof up in school, it's like, that ain't why I'm there. So, as we go down the road, you'll see that, that came into play. But I was pretty well behaved. I can say it safely now because all the transcripts are like in concrete and that I was a really good student.
So when you talk about like this whole thing and you talk about plays in school, et cetera, were you the lead in the high school plays and whatnot?
Yes. Yeah, there's basically people who, from the word go, they're the lead every year. They did Finian's Rainbow and they did Oklahoma. And it's like he was curly and he was 14 years old. It's like that wasn't me because strangely, in terms of blossoming late, I was a way late bloomer. When I was a freshman in high school, I was 4'11" and my voice hadn't changed. So good luck being curly in Oklahoma when you sound like this, you know what I mean? So, one of my first big plays was, at first I started on special effects and Count Dracula, and I made a bloody steak, not the kind I cook. An actual steak for Dracula, that he met his demise through that steak, a steak dinner. So, but then I got a job. See, I got a role in Annie Get Your Gun as her little brother, little Jake. So I was playing a kid because I was short. And then I got older, my voice didn't change, and they gave me like a smaller part. I was an English guy in, 10 Little Indians, an Agatha Christie play. But then my voice changed, and I'm like, oh, this is great. But then I'm still competing against the older kids. So finally, as we got through, those long 4 years of personal growth for me, and I mean like hormonal growth, yeah, then I wound up being the lead, and a funny thing happened on the way to the Forum, which remains one of my favorite shows because the script is just banging. It's like Larry Joe Barton. It's like he wrote MASH. So yeah, so that short answer, yeah. All the plays, everything I could, the talent shows, the dance review, even though I couldn't dance. You get hungry for it, and that's all you want to do.
So was that the next step then for you? Then obviously you did what you see, you did some small theater. You did Annie Get Your Gun. Actually, you're right. So funny thing happened on the way to the Forum is one of my favorites too. Zero Mostel, unbelievable in the show itself, just unbelievable. When you were then going, I guess, finish your elementary and your high school years, you said, "Okay, I'm going to go to another big acting school." You're a Fordham guy, and I went to Fordham too. I have not known Fordham to be a big acting school, although big actors have come from Fordham.
Yes. There's going to be a U-turn here because, well, first of all, yes, Denzel Washington was the year.
Absolutely.
I guess ahead of us or behind, I think ahead of us. And man, this picture is all over the place.
Yeah, he's pretty good. People kind of know that guy.
Hello, and he's doing white roles, and he's playing Julie Andrews on The Sound of Music. He can do anything.
So you knew then that he was going to be a star.
Well, they did because at that point he got, I think his first job was a comedy. I think it was called, I want to say Ink Spot or something like that, where he was like a fish out of water, black guy in a white family or something like that. And that was one of his first big roles, approaching nowhere near what he went through with Glory and Flight and all these great movies that, you know what I mean? King Kong has nothing on me. It's like way before that, he was just trying to get a part in a Joan Rivers movie. But the thing about my journey was that is absolutely mentally, emotionally, psychologically, that's where I was headed. And then it was time to come and sit with my dad and mom, and they're going to say, so, you're 16 years old, and they say, it's time, your college fair's coming up. Let's talk about what you want to do with your life. And I was like, well, and he goes, and I don't want to hear about this acting shit.
Okay. That was going to be your next question. How supportive were they? Right.
So, well, the answer is
not very.
They learned, I guess. They grew along with me. But and as a 16-year-old, with imposing parents who have wanted only the best for you, my father very much a 9-to-5 guy, get a job, you go to college, blah, blah, blah. So that to me was not devastating, because what I began to learn about myself is like, do you think you're going to stop me? I would dare say that to him. He was gigantic. So I had to figure out another plan. This is where Fordham comes into play. I decided that I would do an end around, because I'm a very smart young man, and I would say to him, listen, what I want to do really is going into film and television production. And I'm thinking, oh, he'll buy that.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's got a paycheck.
He won't see what my real plan is. And as I began to tell it to him, he totally bought it. I know I'm setting it up like, oh, how stupid I was. He was like, that's great. And then I started looking at schools, and, I wound up looking at Fordham. I was in Westchester County, New York. It was only 40 minutes away. I was not going to board there. I was going to commute and work at Shopwell, in the strangely, the Rose Hill Shopping Center in Thornwood, New York. And after, a semester at school, I basically had to say, listen, I will work weekends. Please let me. It was before the semester started. I said, I really want to live there. And they allowed it. But after the first semester, I said, I have to be here full time. I'll work my ass off summers. And they let me. And that is a life changer when you're no longer the guy that leaves on weekends. It's like,
right.
the street. You left college on the weekends. Do you know what I mean? It's like, that's insane.
Yes, I do know what you mean. For 3 years, I do know what you mean.
And talk about an eye opener for me. I was going Monday to Friday. This is what college is all about. And listen, let me make no mistake. The Fordham student body knows how to party all week long. But Fridays I would leave and then work in the supermarket and then come home Sunday night or back to school, say home Sunday night or Monday morning. And I will have missed all of the great stories. And after a while, it's like, that's not going to happen anymore.
Is this where you're developing those chops, though? Those acting chops, those, they say you always have to go through repetitions and really kind of get your act together. Is it the Fordham years that you're kind of hammering out your process and figuring out your instrument and all of that stuff?
It's a great question, but I found that I was like, not to be, to inflate myself, but I think even a natural athlete at some point, is playing great sports, and someone says, "Do you realize that you can A, B, C, D, and do the 440 in 3 seconds?" No, it's like, well, let me show you some things. To answer the question, not at Fordham, it was everything we did as kids. Like we watched Bugs Bunny and then I would imitate all the cartoons. Right. Now I'd have to ask my old chums from Milton Drive and Thornwood, was I the better one? It wasn't competitive at that point. You're just doing all the Bugs Bunny voices. And then anytime there's a chance, then the high school plays, and the theater program in my high school was excellent. I've seen many college with my kids in school, college productions, and it's like, man, we had good shows. But when I got to Fordham, I was, don't forget, faking the film and television thing. But, now it became, now we're getting into the class clown area where we just laughed our asses off all the time. And then eventually I started taking the classes at Lincoln Center, not Rose Hill in the Bronx, where we saw the Denzel Washington pictures. And I got to get the guys who, like Dylan McDermott was one of the guys that was in class with me. Everybody just loved him. And I was like the guy coming from, up down from the Bronx. So here I am going to school and then saying, okay, screw it. What are you going to do? Kick me out, Dad, Mom? I am going to take theater classes at Fordham. And they were fine with it. I can't say it was 100% honest because they didn't always check, But someone asked me after that, they said, wow, so for like 2 or 3 years, you were studying film and TV when you could have been, if I had, faced the monster head on, you could have been taking acting classes and living at Lincoln Center. And I would have been like, and give up my Rose Hill friends and that whole lifestyle. But the main point is I wouldn't trade my studies in film and television production for anything. I can be on a set right now and I know what everybody's doing. And now with all this content creation and stuff at home and editing and shooting and whatever we're doing, I play with a band and I'll do like band videos for our stuff, but it's film stuff. It's film production, which, people are playing catch up with that right now, trying to be like, oh my God, how do I create content? I thought it was an obstacle and it wound up being like, it's been a benefit.
So during your time at Fordham, and obviously you do a lot of voiceover work now, did you see yourself coming out saying, I want to be an actor or I want to be a voice actor? And back then, 70s, 80s, was there a space for that over at Fordham, the idea of voice acting?
Oh, absolutely not. I never heard of anything in terms of that. Occasionally you'd see a show and you're watching Chicago and you hear, ladies and gentlemen, Miss Lovey, and you hear
Sure.
like the actor who's doing the voice. But no, and there were no classes for that I knew of. And it also didn't seem like a big thing. I think one of the reasons is that the New York experience at that point, animation was generally in LA. So in fact, even after I started working with my agent, they said, yeah, Bill, animations, you have to be in Los Angeles or be bi-coastal, local. And I'm like, and look how that's changed. But no, when I did it, I wanted to get into acting. I didn't know what specifically, what area, it would be TV or film, or stage. It didn't matter, comedy. I did some stand up. I really wasn't sure what, but at that point, I was like a newborn in terms of my, my freedom. It's like, or better, a fledgling out of the nest. It's like, can fly, and nobody can tell me what to do. So yeah, I was wide open, which is, I think, a really important choice for anybody is to just, and even, you know, whether you're 21 and out of school or at any point, you've got to keep your mind wide open for, I know I'm going to Main Street, but there might be something on, you know, on Second Street. But I think that applies a lot to business in general, entrepreneurship,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
for sure.
invention.
So take us to when you're 21. You know, you set the stage. You're coming out of school. You've been practicing. You've been honing your craft. You're in all these productions. But then it becomes real. It's no longer just an idea. Now it's, okay, I really want to do this. I need to figure out how I'm going to make a living doing this. What did you do?
Yeah.
How did you chase it?
I graduated. I went home. Now, what you should also know is that through all this, taking, you know, acting classes at Fordham, and I was in one of their big shows on campus with the Mimes and Mummers, which is actually kind of the Rose Hill, theater
Acting
company.
club, yeah.
Yeah. And they were cliquey as hell, but I got a great part and brought all my friends. So now suddenly there are football players and film majors coming to the shows, you know, and it's all theater people. And it was great. And I think my father and mother came, and I think they were petrified because, you know, the audience went for it was the part that I had. It was great. It was like a recurring role that keeps coming back and on the town. And by the second appearance of this character, people are going nuts for him. So
Wow.
like, listen, I heard what the audience was like, but I don't want you to think that, you know, he got scared again. So at some point that summer, I had to tell them that we were at that point, they moved to New Jersey, West New Jersey, Andover, and a beautiful house. But what the hell was I doing there? It was an hour to go and see all my friends. So, and I didn't have a car, you know, take the bus. But I did have to, you know, put on my big boy pants and say, I want to talk to you guys about something. And
Right.
it was hard. It was hard because they did not understand. And I had to go down where I had hid you know what a contact sheet is? They don't have them
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Sure.
So you get a roll of pictures, you pay the photographer, you get 2 rolls of pictures, you know, and it's all little teeny thumb, like the little thumbprint, you know what I mean, of these of you, and then you take a loop, like a jeweler's loop, and you look at the picture big, you know, and then they retouch it and take all your acne or errant whiskers off, and then they blow it up to an 8x10. You get it printed up. So that's all a very old school. But anyway, I had them. And we were talking, and I said, I have something to show you. And I brought it upstairs, and they just stared at it. And I just think there were words exchanged, and it got really quiet. And I said to my father, I said, so when you were 18, what did you want to do with your life? And he got really quiet, which is really weird for him. And he said, I wanted to go to sea. He's a Navy guy. And I said, and what did you do? And he said, I went to sea. Then it got really quiet, and I'm tearing up, kind of like I am right now. And he said, I want to let you know something. And I said, what? And he said, I want to let you know that whatever you do, you always have a home here. So it was, you know, how could I have expected this reaction? You know, and so in other words, he knew, and they probably always knew, he's going to do it. And both of my guys are artists. One guy's a jazz musician in New Orleans, and the other guy was wait for it, theater major at Wagner, and he's just getting started. And I know from the word go, I'm not going to discourage them. Maybe they want to go into accounting. But, you know, the scene is always like the acting family. It's like, what are you going to do? What's your next show? Dad, I want to be an accountant. You will do no such thing. You need to have uncertainty. You need to have worry. You need to work in a restaurant.
We should make that movie and flip the whole thing around. That sounds great.
I actually wrote a scene when I was doing sketch comedy. I did a scene like that, and the kid wanted to, the father wanted his kid to play baseball, and he wanted to go into business. His father's like, sure, play baseball.
That's brilliant.
Sure thing, Dad. So yeah, so it was really funny. But anyway, so that was my moment. I mean, that was a big thing for me because, but you have to understand, I was on that path, and nothing was going to take me off it. And listen, my mom as well, but my father, very much an imposing figure. If that's not clear, it should be. But to be like, all right, I have to stand up to that, because what am I going to do? Not what I want to be doing to please my dad, my family. No. So, but it wasn't that I wasn't going to do it. It's that it's like, how the hell am I going to do this? So yeah, I moved to City Island in the Bronx, close to Fordham. I had a car. I lived with an old fella named Jack Singer. He was 84. He would just wanted someone young to pick things up for him, And yeah, and I worked at a restaurant on City Island, Sammy's Fish Box, where they don't tip, by the way.
Oh, geez. Even to this day?
I couldn't tell you, but yeah, but or else, here's something you'd hear on
or you're just a lousy waiter.
Well, listen, I try not to take it personally. By the way, I was working way too hard for these people. You know what I mean? Hi, my name is Bill, and I'll be your waiter. And it's like, yeah, I'll have the fried shrimps. And it's like, okay, great, I'll get you your fried shrimps. And the fisherman's platter. But it was crazy, and that is when I started being like, I got to start doing shows. I got to figure out a way. And you go in, I would drive into the city to get Backstage, which is a trade paper. Maybe it's online now. For some strange reason, I went to 48th Street from City Island. I'm sure I could have gotten at any newsstand in Manhattan, but
Probably.
I knew the way. I would go down to 48th Street, and there was a blind guy named Eddie. And hi Eddie, hey, he didn't know who it was. And I would, my with $1.25, whatever it was for Backstage, and then I'd go and I just look, and get auditions, and and that continued until I eventually left City Island and moved to Astoria with a law school. He went to law school. He's a lawyer now, Fordham Law. And I lived with him, and that's when I really started doing these weird shows. And
were you good at auditioning? Was it something that you embraced? I don't have to ask you if you have nerves or anxiety performing in front of people. We could tell you don't. Or if you do, it's like
sometimes you do. It's like,
of course.
The headaches, the heartaches, the music, the fun, the audience. I'm going to join you. Yeah. I guess butterflies, but I think there's also that process. It's like I was doing a one-man show one time. By the way, there's no one else to rely on when you're doing a one-man.
Yeah, it's just you.
And but I did have a technical guy that I work with some other things, which I'm sure we'll hit on that. But and I asked him to be my technical guy for the show, running the sound and the lights, because with a one-man show, it can't be just you. You must have production value,
right?
And it was all me, and I was like fairly, and he could tell I was like, well, after all this, I wrote the show, put it together, assembled all the crew, booked the space, and he said, Bill, he goes, you're done, you're ready, and it was enough of him saying that I'm like, you're damn right I'm ready. You know what I mean? And then I went to see Saving Private Ryan, and I saw the scene at Normandy Beach, and I'm like, what the hell am I complaining about?
Right,
you know what I mean?
right.
But that was for the one-man show. But in terms of general, like, on-stage nerves, I mean, I think it's a question of not just do you get nervous for that sort of thing. When you're doing it, what kind of show is it? Because I worked with an improv company for a while, and you're doing show after show after show after show after show. And sometimes, many times, most times with improv, there's no script at all. So it's like, so wait a minute, you're going to give me the words that I have to say? It's like, this is way easier than it's like, and by the way, Shakespeare wrote it, and it's kind of proven stuff. You do it an improv show, it's like, okay, what are we going to do? So that will protect you to an extent about what am I nervous about? Even if your guy who's supposed to say, hark, is that the canon I hear, doesn't say it. It's like, well, he's not going to say it, so I would have to say something to get him to say that, Right. So, I would recommend for any actors, take an improv class. In terms of jitters and butterflies, well, yes, anybody. Listen, if I'm going in for an important recording session, and I'm like, oh, the producer's going to be there, maybe the director. Yeah, I get anxious about it. Or we do one of our music shows. It's like, we rehearsed this out the ass. It's like, we
right.
really know this music, but it's like, wow, now we're going to be playing it for people. It's like my fingers are thinking. So, yeah, I do, but it's something you manage, or to an extent, I guess use to be like, good. Because if you were too relaxed, what would that be like? It's like, what if you're a fighter pilot? I don't worry about it.
Whatever.
I let the payload go, and I make a
That's
turn.
right.
If someone shoots at me, I don't give a crap. You're prepared. You drilled.
You use it as fuel. Basically.
Yes, jet fuel.
I'm curious about your work doing improv and your time with the Groundlings, which was a legendary improv and sketch comedy group. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience? Were you working with because some huge names came out of that. I'm just kind of curious about that experience.
Yeah, first of all, it's a flat out one of the best things I've ever done. And I think to an extent, because I also felt like I found a home, not necessarily like that's going to be all that I'm going to do, but it was like that creativity and that genre was like, this is what I kind of do anyway, but then you can do it with people. So that was all really exciting. They were doing so well in LA for decades that they decided that they wanted to open Groundlings East and have a school in New York. Because the whole program, the best thing about it is that it's a school. There's 4 levels. And kind of like Dante's Inferno, but vertical. And, it goes up. But, you start just doing regular improv. Then you start writing sketches. Then you start doing character work. And then you get into the company if you are chosen. And then you're in the performing company, which I guess would be like the 5th level. I started doing that. And that has happened to be where I met my wife. So how about that?
Oh, no kidding.
She's amazing. And she was my teacher.
I would hope you got a good grade in the class.
Listen, I tried everything. The funny thing is, and this goes to, I was doing, we'll talk about puppet work later, but I was doing shows for them. And part of the class that my wife Pam was teaching was the lab class. So the final exam for the lab class was you took the sketches you had worked on, the characters, monologues you'd worked on, and you do it in a show, put on a show. And that was it, final exam. If you did not do scene night, the final exam, you can't move on to the next level.
Do you still stay in touch with your members of your class?
Yes, some of them, or from, Pam, my wife's class,
obviously you're in touch with your wife.
Yes, as often as she'll let me. But yeah, it's I know a lot of them. In fact, I was supposed to have lunch with one of them today, and he is in basically advertising. So yeah, I am in touch with a lot of them, and it's and by the way, even if you see one of them, more likely than not, you're kind of going to pick up right where you left off.
Always.
It's just a great feeling because, you went through, doing shows. People are like, oh, it must be so fun. Well, it is fun, but it is very much a bonding experience, especially when you're working, with the give and take with improv. You really get to know them. And you know how to set someone up for, now he's going to do Liam Neeson. It's like, oh, are you Irish? Matter of fact, I am. And it's like, oh my God. It's like, he did his Liam Neeson. It's like, Bill, that's kind of are you playing softball? Are you in the Pee Wee League? That Bill's doing a Pee Wee. So, yeah. And then just, being able to set people up and learn to work with them and write with them, because it also became like a writing workshop. So, yeah. So I hope that wasn't too much of a departure for improv, but it's great. And let me just say, it remains a great thing.
We have to ask you about the puppeteering. Let's get into it right now. How did this come about?
This is crazy. I saw a little teeny ad. It wasn't even like a full ad. They took up this teeny box and it said, wanted talented, humorous young men. And I figured, well, 2 out of 3. So I went in and it was this animated cartoon character that was, basically high technology for when it was developed in the, late 60s, where you would be working a puppet, but on the screen it looked like, a pen and ink cartoon character. And so it was live interaction, and you'd look at it at that point in time and be like, how is this cartoon talking to me? How's that being done? They have to know it's set up. And then you're at a trade show or a sales meeting, and you're at a trade show, and then you have someone coming up and saying, here, we're going to talk to Roscoe, and it's like, how you doing there, buddy? Where'd you go to Fordham? And then you're looking around like, because I have a spy camera I can see from behind. But you're talking to the cartoon's talking to you. So it was puppeteering, really, because you're working backstage, with all the rods that control and the control for very complicated puppet. But yeah, so, and then we started doing those, and we, we're okay. You got 6 days in Las Vegas, doing the toilet show, and for toilet technology. and it's like, I wonder how that's going to be, with two other puppeteers, and your nights are free, and you just laugh your butt off. And at a certain point, there is a script because they're corporate clients. Basically, it's corporate industrials. So people with a lot of money and wanting you to do a show for them. But so to incorporate their product into it, something that's very serious, into something that's like the audience is going to love this. So trade shows were great, and then we unleashed in Las Vegas for the evenings, and then back to do the show at 9 o'clock in the morning with maybe a hangover, maybe not, but it was just great, and you could go anywhere. I traveled from I went to England for a tour of stuff, and to Canada, and then it's all over the place. Most of the 50 states, I think. So it was just great. But you are writing and also doing improv with this character constantly. So here's this writing again, and here's this improv again, and then puppeteering and throw it on. So yeah, so the puppeteering was great. And believe me, it comes in handy when you have little kids or pretty much anything else. Puppeteering is a wonderful thing. And again, another great group of people are puppeteers. Just, funny.
Do you know the Sound of Music's puppeteer scene backwards and forwards?
Yes.
Can you do that backwards and forwards?
Well, the high on the hill, the lonely goat herd.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Yes, you saw that, and isn't it funny that the puppets are in that? But yeah, we did it, and I was in that scene because I played Max Detweiler in Sound of Music in high school. It was the next step to playing Pseudolus, and funny thing happened on the way to the Forum. But yeah, so that whole scene there, anytime there's puppets, I just love it. And whether it's crank yankers or and any of the
Thunderbirds, big Thunderbirds,
and the Thunderbird, the marionettes. Best thing about the Thunderbirds was that and those shows like Fireball XL5, really old school stuff, Captain Scarlet, they would have the puppets and they'd walk along, but when they did a close up of the marionette's hand of him pushing a button or pulling a lever, it was a human hand that came in. So they cut away, and it's like, that's not the puppet. The puppet's hand looks like a G.I. Joe hand. You know what I mean? It's like it's all cupped and it's plastic. But when they do it to press the button, there's like this hairy guy reaches in. It's like it looks nothing like Captain Scarlet's fingers. But anyway, yeah, all those puppet stuff. I would eat that stuff up. I would just love watching that stuff.
So when did you make the transition into voice acting?
Well, because the character, you're basically, it's not just, you're doing the cartoon character, and it was voice stuff because he's a cartoon. And then you could tell anybody, I'm doing a cartoon character.
Sure.
Oh, you're an animation. So that was in tandem with improv. They were kind of like going together and certainly helping with, writing and things like that. And then realizing that, okay, and I did the puppet stuff from, it was the better part of like 7 or 8 years and a lot of travel on the road. And I'm like, well, I don't want to be doing this forever. You could, because there's always going to be corporate entertainment. I just started looking into, well, what if I took a voiceover class? And my wife had been like, you should definitely do it. And I was working with a guy who was being trained as one of the puppeteers who gave voiceover lessons. And I said, I'll take lessons with you, and I did. We made a tape. Then you start, you basically pound the pavement with a cassette tape.
Sure.
And I got into this really big agent. I mean, they had some of the voice of Wendy's. They had the voice of MTV at the time. Guy, it sounded like this, the guy's like 30, but the youngsters watching MTV were probably 17 and 18. But Victor Caroli. So they were great, but they were so good that they didn't know what to do with me. I was new. And I got a couple things with them. I think I did a Honey Nut Cheerios commercial, which is how I got my union card. But yeah, but that was exciting too. And then I'm also doing the improv shows. So I'm doing the puppeteering at the same time as the improv shows, and I'm also taking the voiceover classes, and I get an agent. And but I'm doing the improv shows, and some of the people in the improv show have good commercial agents. One of them brought one of them to the show a couple times, and they were like, we have to sign you. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm signed with this agent who doesn't really do that much for me. Like, let me think about it. And then, and I came, and I kind of had to like break ranks, and I didn't want to, and they were a little upset. But then I started doing voiceover stuff with this commercial, voiceover and on camera. And they're still my agent. So it's been a while with them.
Is that when the momentum really started for you? I mean, it sounds like
No.
the traveling, the puppeteering. I imagine you weren't getting rich doing that. That was for the love and to.
Yeah, but you also have to understand that if you look at it from like the acting viewpoint, where a guy's like, well, I'm doing a show, down at the Black Box Theater on 13th Street. Black Box is like a room that's all black, black walls, black ceiling, black floor, seats and lights. And it could have been someone's apartment 30 years ago. It's like, let's knock this wall and make a theater and put on a show. So, and they're doing that. It's like, yeah, but so well, let's meet you. I'll meet you tomorrow. I'm like, no, I have to do brunch. It's like, no, I got a shift. So the idea that when I was working as a puppeteer and writing,
You were acting. You were working.
yes, but also it was a salaried position. So I have a salaried position as a puppeteer. So, and it was great. And then after a while, you go freelance. Somebody says you make more money doing freelance stuff. But still,
who would have known someone could make a lot of money as a freelance puppeteer?
It's all relative. You run into one guy who has a hit movie, and it's like, so you made in one day what I made. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
But still, believe me, my wife is no dummy, and I think. Hopefully, I would think part of my attraction is that, when her dad said, what's this guy do for a living? Well, he's a puppeteer in a salary position, as opposed to like, oh, dad, he's a wonderful actor. It's like, can I borrow $500 for tuna fish? But it was a money making thing.
Yep.
And then you start getting in commercials, and that's a whole different thing.
And is that where the momentum in your career really started to kick in?
Yeah, I would think that it was that because, there's a certain amount of momentum that happens with the puppeteering stuff because it was salaried. But then when you're getting into more show busy stuff where it's not just for a contained corporate audience, it is for, the world. I saw your Honey Nut Cheerios commercial. Oh my God, you're in the FedEx commercial. Oh my God, I saw you. And then it's like, then what else can you do? But yeah, that was like definitely where I felt like I was more of a quote professional actor as someone who's on salary at a production company doing puppets. Although that was a very professional experience for me.
I mean, you're painting a very rosy picture. This is not a starving artist type of story that I'm hearing here, but I guess I'll ask, was there ever a point, just knowing that you had to get the gig to get paid, where you're not living, where's that next paycheck coming from? But there's definitely that, besides the one salaried position, which sounds like a godsend for any artist.
God, yeah.
Was there a moment where you were like, hey, I don't know where my next check is going to come from,
I would think because I had so many things going on, that's probably less. I mean, there was a point when I could be like, well, I could do another industrial, there was that.
Right.
But thank God and faith has a lot to do with it. There is a certain continuum, and you said starving artist, and that is certainly a term that everybody has heard. Sure. I think I began to see with industrials, puppets, commercials that it's like that doesn't have to be a rule, and I think it's sad when people feel like I must struggle in anything.
You actually have been. You mentioned Adult Swim, like near the beginning of the interview, and I got to tell you, I didn't have a chance to try to jump in, and you actually were on one of my favorite. You were actually on one of my favorite Adult Swim early on, C-Lab 2021.
Yes,
oh my God, was it Jodine Sparks?
Jodine Sparks, yes, the communication, who was always seated for some reason. But yeah, that was just freaking great, and we would look at those scripts and Adam Reed and Matt Thompson, just funny on the page, as we would say, and then we would do the script and they say, all right, now you guys do it your way, and man, we laughed. And yeah, that was several seasons, and I still I'm doing some convention work where you go and you sign prints, and Sparks is one of them. Or else you do a cameo. You know what the cameo is, where you basically, go on it, look for your favorite celebrity and say, I'd like him to wish my wife a happy birthday as Jodine Sparks. Happy birthday, baby. But that was great. And yeah, some of these things, just video games or cartoons, or, maybe even I did the Parquet Margarine Tub for a while, people remembered and it's memorable. But the Adult Swim stuff was great. And that was one of their first big shows. Very, very fun. And now the one I'm doing now is also Adult Swim, but a little bit of a different format. and certainly edgier.
I guess you always stay in the family then, in that sense, right? So like once you do one, you're there. You're always in
Well,
that.
yeah,
Not
but I
just in the
haven't
Rolodex, but
done
always in.
Adult Swim stuff in quite a while. Maybe
Right.
a couple of like roles, but not like where you're doing the whole series. But yeah, coming back to Adult Swim is just really, really fun. And of course it's changed because the C Lab was like early 2000s, and here we
Yeah,
are
we're in the
20 years
very
later.
infancy stage of Adult Swim.
Yeah,
Definitely. Yeah.
one of the first
One of the first, right? I
three
think
or
it was
four
you
shows.
and
Yeah.
it was you and Harvey Birdman, attorney at law.
Yeah, Harvey Birdman and Aqua Teen Hunger Force, which is the only one they captured at the first pass, and Brack was another one. And I just
Space
watched
Ghost,
the
Coast
show.
to Coast. Oh my gosh, absolutely.
Space Ghost. Wait, we used to watch the original Space Ghost when it was on. I guess it was CBS. I don't know what it was. So that would be stuff from a while ago, and again, that was still the agent that I have now. But yeah, these things have some of them have a shelf life. It's like, you did what? I never seen that. And then some of them, kind of run forever. I think you can probably still go on HBO Max, I think, and watch C Lab. And you should, because it's really funny. Those are very funny scripts.
Do you have, when you look back at all the different things you've done, like favorite characters, favorite projects? Like, what are a couple of highlights?
There's a lot. Someone asked me that recently, and I was like, well, my favorite character is one I'm working on right now. You know what I mean? It's like whatever I'm doing now is the what I'm working on. But yeah, I did. Sparks was definitely way up there. And then there's a character, Jeremiah Fink, in this video game called BioShock Infinite. He's a really bad guy, and he is the evil guy. And I think in a video game or that kind of format, you must have pure evil. So, good can triumph. And this guy was bad. I mean, he was racist. And I don't mean like racist now. I mean racist when no one was saying, you're a racist. It's like
Super racist.
You cannot listen. If you play the game, I would not be surprised if it's like, yeah, they cut that part out. It's like, that's my big scene, But anyway, yeah, and he meets his downfall. But that was a great character, and it's so funny. That one of my other favorite ones is in the Geronimo Stilton series, which is audiobooks, where I got to do a bunch of different characters. In fact, all the characters. When you do an audiobook, you do all of the characters. And, if you're reading a James Patterson one, it's just a lot more subdued. The guy's like, the narrator's just saying,
sure.
You walked into the room and saw Stephen. And then Stephen's like, hello. How are you? Everything is really subdued. Geronimo Stilton, he's like a mouse who runs a newspaper, and, everybody is just cartoonish and really fun, but it's for kids. So guess what? Kids are a lot more forgiving, and they were read-alongs, and just a really, really great series of books that I did. And but that was great because you're doing 7, 8, 10 characters in the book, along with the 3 or 4 that are already in the stories. The core of this little newspaper group. So that was a great one. And working on Arcane as Huck, which in the first season just had 2, maybe 3 episodes, but it was that was just a really good one. And then it's like, hey, we won an Emmy, and then all my friends are like,
that is a great series. I'll say that it's a great series.
Like, Bill, I heard you won an Emmy, and it took me a while to say thank you, but I'd be like, well, no, the show I worked on won an Emmy.
Yeah.
It happened to be the episode that I was in, but anyway. But anyway, but yeah, it's like, so I'll take it. And next time I go to LA, I'm going to ask to hold the trophy. So, you know what I mean?
You didn't get one shipped to the house?
No.
So here's sort of a crazy, follow up to that. Who owns the voice? Meaning you've spent all this time crafting the character, coming up with the voice. You've come up with this brilliant idea that you've brought to life. Are you then able to use that voice on podcasts? Like, are you able to, who owns it? Are you able to imitate it, talk about it? What are the boundaries?
Yeah. In that respect, it's mine. But what I probably couldn't do is to say it was Sparks, and to do like, although now it's so much later, but something more current. First of all, you wouldn't want to, because it's associated with that program. It would be out of context. But generally, yeah. I mean, if it's a mob guy talking about getting a couple things taken care of, you do the thing that I told you to do at the place. Where I got to spell it out for you. You could do that in a commercial. You could do it, or whatever. Or even if it's like you do an imitation. I did some cartoon where it's like, can you cover, meaning like, can you imitate? Mel Brooks couldn't finish this because he was doing another movie. So could you cover Mel Brooks doing this voice? And it was like in a cartoon. So I did that, but that doesn't mean that I can't, do a video. It's like, it's me, Mel Brooks. Bill Lobley is the best actor I've ever seen in my life. So, of course you can do it. And to an extent, yeah, I think you own it, but it's also based on the scripting. So it's like,
yeah.
And say that, but I have
So
to.
it's not like music where if somebody hears a piece of a song in another song, everybody freaks out about copyright infringement and stuff like that.
No, and I also think that, if you do it, they know you're doing it. Like I had to do something recently where it was actually Johnny Carson, because in the movie Naiad, they had the tape of Diana Naiad on Johnny Carson, but they weren't able to get him announcing her. They said, "Can you do Carson?" I said, "Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, Diana Naiad." So I got to do that in the movie, but I just did it for you now.
Yep, got it.
So now we're going to get sued.
Yeah. Going right into the deep end. Look, there's a choice for you. It's like, would you like to, go into litigation or go to trial? So binding arbitration. But so you can do it. You can do the voice. No one really owns it. And then, I don't think that anyone would, if you're doing like Bugs Bunny, someone said like, hey, that's property of Warner Brothers. Maybe. If it's Bugs Bunny eating a carrot, fine. They wouldn't allow you to do it in a commercial. So with, certain things that are branded or big like that, like Mickey Mouse, good luck. But yeah, it's essentially your character, and then it could go anywhere, especially if it's something like a New York guy. It's like, there's a lot of different kinds of New York guys,
Right.
So
how lucrative has your career been for you? I mean,
I'm loaded.
I was going to say, which pays better? Which pays better? Cartoon, not cartoons, but let's say, voiceovers for commercials, animation, video games. Which pays better?
I'll start with video games, because still right now you could do a video game and have 3 sessions at whatever your agreed upon rate is. And let's just say, for argument's sake, just for fun, that it's $2,000 a day. You do your 3 sessions, you get $6,000, right? That's it for video games. Now, they're trying to work it out. So that'd be like one aspect of basically called a buyout. That's it. It's the way it's always been for video games. Commercials, interesting about them is like that has changed, because you used to be able to do a commercial that would run network like ABC, NBC, CBS, or Fox. And the money would come in, and it's like, oh my God, I did 1 session for them for this TV thing. And I'm still getting checks throughout 2 years it's been running. And then they renew it, and your agent says, how about, 3,000 a cycle? And then you do 4 cycles, So for 1 commercial, 1 day, So that has changed with cable and streaming.
Sure.
And I don't know if you recently, there was a strike in 2000.
The strike thing. I was going to ask, how has the strike now affected your ability to make a living?
Well, let me just say, if there's a work stoppage, you can't. But again, you could do some things like people could sign an interim agreement, and we did actually do some work that was allowed by interim agreement stuff during the strike. But the ADR people really suffered, just like the movie people suffered. So there's nothing you can do about that. But if you're doing that now, part of the strike was that when you do something like that, the pay is better, because people will tell you, an actor will open a residual check, and it's like 65 cents. It's like, it almost costs that much to mail this to me. But then other ones, it's like, no, this is what I should be getting. And Arcane through Netflix is an excellent example. That was a huge show. And eventually they came around to paying, and that's been great. So short answer, you really can't predict it. But there was definitely a time during commercials, and to an extent there still is, if you get the right one, where it's like, this is old school running, and they still do it.
It's like hitting a cash machine, right?
And that can be great. Or you're the spokesperson for Toyota, Jan, or Flo from Progressive, by the way, another Groundling. So you do, then you get a contract, and then it's like, oh, you do make money in commercials, but it has changed a lot, and that can spook a lot of people.
So you're sitting there in your home studio, and I have to think that that's been instrumental in just the ease with which you can do your work.
We had an apartment in the city. We had a house and an apartment because, commercials. Then along comes college, and I'm like, these boys have to go to school. So it's like we wound up selling the apartment. And that was very hard for me. It was on the Upper West Side. Relatives would come in, let's stay with us in the apartment, but we were here in New Jersey. And then it was time to sell. And it was awful. What am I going to do? Where's my home office? And there was a little room in our house in the basement where I am now. And I was like, I could make it into a studio. My agent's like, Bill, I don't see you having a home studio. I really don't. And this is like 2014. And then around that time, things changed so much with, the technology is such that you can really build something nice for yourself and have great quality because they really expect that. So I did. A friend of mine who's very, very, very helpful, Fordham guy. He's a cameraman now, but he also does great stuff around the house. Let's do it. Let's build it. And
did he go to Fordham to be a theater major and then ended up
No, he was
working
he was always filming TV. Always filming TV.
Okay.
But he became a contractor. I know what you're saying. It's like I told my father I was going to be a film major and I really wanted to contract. I wanted to grout. But yeah, so he built it with me. And then, so that was by 2015, this is up and running, not using it a lot. And then, a few years later, the pandemic hits and we don't have an apartment in the city. And when the pandemic hit, it was like, thank God. And
yeah,
so you're definitely in the game changer category because believe me, there were people that were scrambling in their closets. Well, I got a microphone and I have to get a hookup and what do you mean hardwired? Well, Ethernet, what is it? So, but I had it and it was an amazing thing. But listen, there were times before the pandemic when it was February and there's 3 inches of snow on the ground and Route 4 is clogged up. It's going to take me 2 hours to get into the city. It's like, could I do it from home? Oh, Bill, absolutely. You have a great setup. So I kind of like to think that my, the quality here is good. I'd like to think it's the envy of the voiceover community, but I'm sure there's nicer ones. But it's great. It's great. And, and the people that help me are, were just saints. They didn't have to. Bill, here's what you need. You get this microphone and said that it's going to be great. And you get these pads, like these acoustic pads. It's like people are like, get a blanket. I'm like, no, I'm going to get the good thing, but I'm always like that. I'm always like, how much can I spend on this? It just makes me feel good.
Yep. Well, Bill, you open up the door, where as we start to wind down, and we're going to ask you for your advice, although I think you've covered a lot of that stuff already in a moment for young people trying to break in. But before that, you talked about wine. And in our intro to the conversation, I talked about the fact that you are a gourmet chef. So we do need
and
to
an mixologist.
Go down that path for a moment. Talk to us about that passion. Talk to us about where that came from, et cetera, et cetera.
Here's my thing. Without showing you my thing.
Thank you.
Yes, it's like, let's keep it clean, will you, Bill? The thing about me is that if I like doing something that is call it a pure hobby, I will always find a way to be like, what if it was a show? You know what I mean? It's like, let's put on a show. So I just loved cooking. And I also have been known to be a little obsessive compulsive. And I thought, would it be funny? And I started doing Oscar dinners, for our friends with, recipe items from the nominated Oscar movies. Like we did Titanic for Titanic that year.
Nice.
That's when it was. So it was a gigantic seafood pie. But, Bill had to put lobster, shrimp, and scallops and spend a fortune. And it was great. And it had smokestacks and the tin foil pan was shaped into a ship, So Titanic, Shakespeare in liver. It was a giant head made of liver. It looked like Shakespeare with little carrot mustache. But so we did all this wild stuff, and I'm like, I should do videos. So I started doing that, and a couple of pitch videos, things like that. And then we got before Food Network a couple of times, and they would always say, or Discovery or whatever, and they would say, "Well, are you a chef? We want an expert. We need a chef." And I'm like, no. And then finally, I said, you know what? Why don't I just get a degree? Now, I joke that it's a correspondence class, basically, but I did occasionally bring in professionals to assess me. So I got, what they call a gourmet cooking certificate. But, I took that to heart. I did all my little practical the tests that they give you. It's like I scored really high, except for game identification. And I don't mean football and baseball. I mean like lamb versus veal versus elk. It's like I don't know. Let me smell it. Don't smell it, but let me touch it. So I started doing that, and then I got the degree, and I went to the producer, and I said, "Hey, great news." I said, "I am now a certified gourmet chef." And he said, "That's great." He goes, I talked to some of the people. Do you know what they're looking for? I said, "Oh, tell me what." He said, "Non-chefs." It's like,
No.
I can't go back. Once the door is open, it won't close. You know what I mean?
Oh.
If you're once a Marine, you're always a Marine. Marines, Eagle Scouts, and alcoholics. It's like, I am a Marine. I am an Eagle Scout. I am an alcoholic. It's like you can't go back. I am a gourmet chef. I can't unlearn it. But yeah, then I started doing like, news meals, which I incorporated news topics of the day, and I did my videos. Now we're back to like content creation.
Yep.
I started doing that. And listen, I still proudly hang my certificate. I've not done the news meals for a while. I did it pretty much through the pandemic and started doing like instructional stuff and really enjoyed it. But
they're great. They're absolutely great.
Oh, you've watched them. Great. Yeah.
The cedar plank one, I liked. The cedar plank salmon one, I liked a lot.
Yeah, that was one of our actual pitch videos that we did. And yeah, people really like that one. And I'll encounter people that are like, these are so good, and I was like, I think so. And some of them are really silly. I did one when there was the shooting in Brussels, and it was, I said, I'm going to do a video. My friend said, nobody's laughing about that. I said, it doesn't have to be balls out funny to get a point across. So I took like a thing of Brussels sprouts, and I had all the news reports of this horrible thing that was happening there in Belgium. And it was just a little container of Brussels sprouts. And with all the news things going on, how horrible it was, I just took the American flag and my hand went into the shot and put the flag in and just said, we're behind you. It was great. People like,
it was very nice. Yeah.
I cried, and it's like, it doesn't have to be silly, but it's news and it's food. And I did one for Billy Graham when he died. I just did graham crackers and I put them in a crucifix shape.
Well, we loved it. And it was newsmeals.com, right?
Newsmeals.com. Yeah, I'm not doing many right now, but yeah, the cooking is a big thing, but it's a passion for me. I'll go upstairs. My wife will be like, I know you're really tense today. You had a really busy day. I know you probably don't want to cook. I'm like, it's the opposite.
Yeah, that's exactly what I
I love it. It really relaxes me. So yeah, and then when you get your friends at a guys' week, it's like, Bill, would you mind cooking? It's like, you're damn right.
Absolutely right.
I don't mind cooking. So yeah, it's another thing, and it's the same thing with my music and my college band. It's like we're doing a pitch, or it's still out there for like a show about band reunions. But I don't mean like Led Zeppelin. I mean like your band, the band that you had in school. And so that's one of the things. But again, hearing music, which, transports me to like the world of rock and roll. And it's like, what if I did a show? It's like,
it's a great idea.
I can't stop it. I can't stop it. So yeah, but it's like any hobby, there's always
there's a show in it somehow, some way. There's a show in there.
And it's not necessarily monetizing. I mean, that's great when it happens, but yeah. So you I just don't know.
But that's the beauty of it. I mean, you are a true creative at heart, and you've lived this incredible journey. It's so interesting talking to you because you're open-minded and you put yourself out there and you let things happen and you just enjoy them and celebrate them.
Yeah, that is a big part of it. And it's like, why are you so down all the time? It's like, well, I got to drive to Chicago. It's like, how's the drive? I don't know. It took me 6 hours. It's like, did you enjoy the drive? But it's like, we drive down to North Carolina to like a beach house that the family has. And it's like, we go down there and my wife says, don't you want to fly? I'm like, I really like that drive. I love the drive. And do we have a great time? She gets tired. She gets a cramp in her leg. She reads me the paper. But yeah, the journey is something. And, but to be honest, my working is a big thing. I don't like to take time off, which is weird. I'm sure that's frustrating for a lot of people. But it's like, if I go on the road, it's like, can I bring a microphone and a rig? Because technology allows it. So I could record something from the road. And I've done it. And it's great. And it makes me feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's a big piece of advice is keep going, keep doing it. And don't let bastards tell you no.
Yeah, and that's
Because they'll
that's
try.
great advice.
They will try.
There you
They
go.
will try.
In
Yeah,
every
they
walk
will.
of life, in every walk of life. So Bill, if people want to see your work and get to know you a little bit better, how do they find you?
Well, you can Google me. I mean, and people like, I'm sure I have all the websites, and everything, and the X or Twitter and Instagram. I mean, Instagram, I'm in. I like a lot more now. So you'll find really what's going on with me, either socially or professionally. Like I'm doing this convention in Illinois in September. They planned that far in advance. So I just did a video about that, just, saying here's what I'm doing. But I think that's at B Lobley, Blobley. And then Twitter is at BILLLOBLEY, the full name. But if you put in my name, it should come up. And then BillLobley.com, a website that I'm told needs to be reworked. I'm like, fine. And you know who says that? Website designers want to charge you $1,000. Bill, I was thinking, hey, couldn't help but notice. It's like, if you allow us to. So there's that. But yeah, you've got to have a platform. So there's that. But yeah, you can find a lot of stuff about me by Googling. And it will lead you to all of those things. But yeah, I mean, I could give you all the addresses, which I did. So please, by the way, if you get there, please follow me. It just makes me feel good. Hard to monetize, but follow me.
Yeah, and I think we all have, and I can promise everybody who's listening right now that it is well worth it. There's a lot of great stuff up there. The cooking videos are spectacular. So I feel very lucky, Bill, that you connected with us. I mean, you're a listener of the show. You wrote us a note.
He's a fan.
And said, hey, not necessarily that you'd like to come on. You just wanted to say hi. And we feel pretty lucky.
You guys do it right. And listen, I'll do that anyway. My wife and I were watching, like a Sunday morning, watching a thing, and there's some local news program. It's on New Jersey 12. And with all the crap that goes on with news websites and, you pick your side, this woman was so even-handed and likable and intelligent that I found her and I'm like, hi, you don't know me. Not a stalker, but we found you to be, and put the we in so that I'm not a weirdo. My wife and I were watching and blah, blah, blah. Now, she never got back to me, so I won't reveal her name. But still, it's like, you've got to say these things. That's some more advice. Be nice.
Yeah, it meant a lot.
And it's like some guy could be who you think is the most happy, successful person in the world is having a rough day. Say, hey, I like your stuff. I like this. Thank you for cutting my lawn. Thank you for working on my kitchen. Would you like water? Thank you very much. No one ever offers me water. So yeah, it's good. But listen, always ready for the next thing. People are like, I don't want to ask Bill. He's probably busy. It's like, please ask me. I'll do your demo. It's like, Bill, I know you probably charge a lot. I was like, tell me about the project. Let's do this. And then, one thing could lead to another because there are no wrong choices.
Exactly. And as such, I am very happy that we asked you. Bill, thank you so much for joining us. So that was Bill Lobley. And I should point out that Bill is a listener of the show. He came to us by, he's such a gentleman. He simply sent us a note via the website saying, hey, guys, I love your show. I listen. Keep it up. And when I saw that, I jotted Bill a note back and said, hey, let's connect, which led to this conversation today. So I am so happy that I followed through on that. What a great conversation. Larry Shea, what are your takeaways?
Yeah, what a gifted guy. We talked about it in the beginning. He's just built for this, right? How he drops into different voices as he's telling stories and coming from he must have used 100 voices in this interview, just coming from left field, but he's built for this and he's so much fun. And you can really see how the early improvisation stuff with the Groundlings kind of set the tone for him. I asked him about anxiety, performance anxiety, and, do you ever get nervous going out there? And he's like, hey, I did improv. There's no safety net. There's no script. You just got to make it sing and dance and make it up as you go along and use your mind and use your body, your instrument, as it were, your voice, your body. And he just does it so well and with such ease. And he talked about how when he Right. It's effortless. And he gets into acting and he's like, oh, and now you're going to give me a script and there's words. That's one less thing I have to worry about. You know, it's so easy for him. And this is a world I talked about in the beginning. I tried to get into this world and I'm clearly not built for that. You know, I'm built for this and other stuff, playing golf, but he's just so good at what he does. And you hear it in his voice. You see it on his face. I encourage you to watch his work because he's really fun and really entertaining.
You know, first of all, who knew that you could make money as a puppeteer doing stuff for corporate, like, I guess, bathroom products? Who even knew this stuff existed?
Right.
But the one thing I'll take away from Bill is that, you know, and you can tell from the conversation, the guy's always on. Right. He's a creative in the truest sense, that he's always thinking about, hey, what could I turn this into? You know, with this little thing I'm doing to be good for a show. I love to cook. I could make a cooking show. I love to talk. I could turn that into, voice acting work. So the guy is always on and he's always creative. And that's just really, really kind of cool. Because, I mean, it's a tough job to have, right? If your job is just, you know, like, how do you put that on a resume? What's that look like on a resume? Creative. What does that mean? And and Bill's kind of showing you that, look, it takes a lot of courage to do that. It takes a good deal of courage to say to yourself, okay, I obviously have to make a living. I'm not going to do the 9-to-5 thing. So what can I do in its stead? And he did all the requisite work to get to that point where he can say to himself, this is my job, and my job is simply being creative and creative all the time.
Yeah, and it's not a starving artist story, right? Like, I went into it thinking, you know, most actors voice, like, you got to piece it together and, like, you don't know where your next paycheck is coming from. That's not the case with Bill Lobley, you know, and he built a home studio. So he had ease with which to do more projects, and he's built for this. He's fascinating. He's wonderful to talk to. And Larry Samuels, I think you hit the nail on the head. He's a pure gentleman.
Let me say one last thing there is that, you know, I know I kind of mentioned it during the interview itself, but he was part of one of my favorite Adult Swim cartoons, C-Lab 2020. He was on for the entirety of the series. I've watched some of Arcane. I love that stuff. So look, I'll say this about him too. And you mentioned a moment about his home studio. He by far and away is the best sounding guest that we've had on the show as well. And we have had a sound recording engineer on the show. Bill sounded better.
No doubt. Yeah, and the point that I want to touch on is his conviction. You know, this is a guy who, from the very beginning, knew exactly what he wanted to do, and he was going to do it. And he had the confidence and he had the courage to chase it. He couldn't necessarily always be open about it because of, you know, the feelings of his father, who had different expectations of him, but he never wavered. He stayed the course. And I truly got tears in my eyes when he told the story of when he finally had to sit down with his parents and tell his dad what he was going to do. And his father said, okay. I literally got choked up and in a way almost started crying as he told that story. It just, his conviction, his talent, it really, really inspired me.
And I'll say to close us out, hail, men of Fordham, hail. A good Fordham man. We knew he'd be good.
Of course. So anybody who's curious to check out his work, go to BillLobley.com. There are a ton of great clips up there, and I promise you will not be disappointed. So with that, Bill, thank you so much for joining this episode of No Wrong Choices. We also thank you for joining us. If this episode made you think of an inspiring person in your life who could be a great guest, please send us a note via the contact page of our website at NoWrongChoices.com. We also encourage you to connect with us on LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, X, and Threads. On behalf of Tushar Saxena, Larry Shea, and me, Larry Samuels, thank you again. And always remember, there are no wrong choices on the road to success, only opportunities, because we learn from every experience.